So thank you guys for joining us here at Placemaking Week Europe in beautiful Reggio Emillia. My name is Evan Snow, and I'm a very passionate arts advocate, community builder, and placemaker based in South Florida in the Fort Lauderdale area. And I started an initiative I'll be talking about called Zero Empty Spaces, where we activate vacant commercial spaces to create affordable working artist studios. And this inspired some renovation work in another part of Italy, in Genoa, in a historic district, which I'm going to speak about on behalf of a collaborator, because you learn so much about what is possible. Thank you guys for sharing. And you actually inspired me to, I think I'm going to actually add some additional context and inspiration. And my goal today, by sharing here, is to hopefully inspire, you guys to potentially, hopefully change the way you view and interact with empty spaces, and hopefully inspire you to maybe make some change in your community. So I was not into placemaking, I was not into art, but 10 years ago. And how many of you have ever been to Miami? Okay. Have you ever heard of something called Wynwood? We like to think it's the street art capital of America and potentially of the world. And it was an industrial warehouse district where artists were able to go and basically chip in for cheap rent in a warehouse that they would be able to paint in. And then basically real estate developers who are art collectors would come to patronize the artists. Once they find out about this area, they started making investment, and from that investment, it became a destination for art. And this was also around the same time as something called, how many of you guys have heard of Art Basel in Miami? Okay, so Art Basel, the largest art fair in the world, arguably, has contributed to the revitalization of Miami. We never had anything like that in my area of Broward County, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, which is just 30 to 45 minutes north of Miami. But art had such a profound impact on my life, finding out about this Wynwood area and then eventually Art Basel, that I wanted to bring these platforms to my community of the Fort Lauderdale, Hollywood, Broward County area. But we didn't want to do what everybody else was doing an art fair initially inside of a tent, convention center, or hotel. So initially, me and my business partner, Mr. Andrew Martineau, decided we have very unique elements of Fort Lauderdale. We have the Venice of the Americas, a Los Olas intercoastal waterway system that connects miles with a water taxi, similar to Venice, that has these beautiful homes that are really mansions on the water that oftentimes, when they're for sale, sit vacant for long periods of time. And so instead of doing what everybody else does, doing an art fair inside of a tent, convention, or hotel, we initially decided to take vacant mansions that were for sale and put the art all throughout the home and make this only accessible via boat. It's called Art Fort Lauderdale, the Art Fair on the Water, and it ran 4 years up until COVID, and obviously we all know what happened then, so we put it on pause. But essentially this initial venture and experience, changing the way people view and interact with empty residential real estate, got us the interest of our local real estate board, which then had brokers, developers, and property managers saying, hey, could you do art in our commercial space? And fortunately, my business partner was an artist at heart, and he was an early stage artist in the Wynwood Art District that was one of those artists that would chip in $100 per month and for a warehouse. And but then he wanted to be a full-time artist, but he liked nice things, so he couldn't be full-time, so he got into advertising and marketing. And throughout his career, he made his way up to a marketing executive for the Westfield Corporation, one of the largest mall companies in the world, where he developed vacancy management strategies and solutions for malls. He created the first commission-free art gallery in an underutilized portion of a food court, initially from the mall's perspective to attract and retain shoppers, keep feet in the street longer, create some positive buzz and press and social media content for the mall. But as an artist and arts advocate at heart, it was to create a platform for the artists to have a commission-free gallery in a commercial type of setting. So that experience lent itself to this. Now we're having commercial real estate developers, brokers, and property managers saying, hey, could you do art in our commercial space? By the way, we're not going to pay you for it. And we were having artists from the art fair that we were supporting, which was actually all primarily independent artists, not represented by a gallery, saying, hey, where are our studio spaces at, let alone affordable, let alone not in the worst part of town where the rent is generally the cheapest. So we put our thinking caps on and we came up with this initiative to, we were driving around, we saw there's all these empty spaces, all these for lease signs. My county at this time in 2019 got named the least affordable county for housing in the country. We thought, what if we can make this the most affordable place for artists to create in? What if there was no more empty spaces, or better yet, what if there was 0 empty spaces? We approached our mayor, who's a supporter of ours, supported the project, and said, hey, we want to see about doing this. He suggested we connect with the primary property owner developer of our downtown, our main street, Los Olas Boulevard in Fort Lauderdale. We always heard he was a tough cookie. He gave us a meeting, took him 3 minutes. He said, I'll give you a space. It was vacant for 3 years. We go in there, we put about 9 local artists who all invited their friends, families, collectors, social media following, had one of the widest attended grand openings of anything in our city's history, over 1,000 people in the street, just based off the novelty of the concept and local people being on the high street, being on the main street. And the way the story goes, 3 months into it, a gentleman came in. He said, I like the buzz and energy in the space, as you can kind of see here from these videos, asked for a landlord's number, signed a permanent lease. The property owner moved us to the next available space that was vacant for 5 years. It was a former bank. It had a bank vault in the middle. Very tough to lease, very high price real estate, $50,000 a month. No one was paying it. And same thing, 3 months into that, a gentleman came in, said he liked the buzz and energy in the space, asked for a landlord's number. That's proven the concept that now we've opened 33 of these locations in the US over the last 6 years across 4 states. We've had over 800 artists come through the program, and it has changed hundreds of artists' lives thousands of times over. So we've been doing this, and mind you, this is a completely self-funded initiative, passion project, labor of love. We've done everything ourselves internally. Thankfully, we're very resourceful. My business partner is one of the most talented creative geniuses I've ever known and had agency experience, so he's able to facilitate the logo, the branding, the website, the social media. We've done every build out, every lease for every artist, every event, every social media post, because that's what it takes sometimes to get things off the ground, especially if there's no funding available. But if you find something that you're passionate about, revitalizing an empty space, or whatever your interest or passion might be, it could allow you to turn your passion into a profession, which is something that I like to speak about. So clearly, as you guys can kind of hear, we're in it for the right reasons. We're in it to provide the platforms for the artists. Providing the support to the real estate developers is secondary. They have the vacant space. They need somebody to activate it. And obviously the real estate owners, they don't want to deal with 20 artists. So by building this brand and having this vision and this mission to activate these spaces, and serving as one point of contact for the property owner, developer, one point of contact for the artist, it makes it super easy because we take care of everything. We negotiate significantly discounted lease and licensing agreements, generally $0. We take care of the insurance, which we found throughout this experience helps the owner reduce their insurance costs, because if you have a vacant space in the US past 60 days, the insurance companies charge excess insurance premiums as the properties are subject to vandalism, maintenance, increased costs. So we save them money on the insurance. We take the utilities off of their P&L. We pay for the utilities. We do the permitting, the signage, the branding. We do everything, and we make it super easy. I'm going to just skip around a little bit here for the sake of time. But we basically will have a property owner, developer get connected to us either directly or via a business improvement district, a downtown development authority, a city commissioner, economic development office, whoever might be interested. And we'll have our initial conversation, negotiation. We'll, once we come to preliminary mutual understanding, we'll review their terms of their certificate of insurance requirements and what they require for the property, which we're glad to meet to satisfy that. Come for a site visit. tour the property, make sure that it works. Not all empty spaces are created equally. Sometimes there's a lot of storage space that we can't use. Sometimes there's not a lot of outlets that we're going to have to make significant electrical investment. So we evaluate the space, make sure that it works for us to subdivide a large space into smaller spaces to create these artist studios. And then once we determine that, we'll execute the lease and licensing agreement with the property owner. We'll start submitting our permits and then schedule open house preview and information session a couple weeks out for the artist to then come see the space after we build it out and hear our spiel and our presentation and the benefits that we provide to the artist, which include having a space not only to create and collaborate, but we also provide spaces for artists to sell, and we do not take any commission on their sales. If they host classes and workshops, whatever they generate, they keep 100%. So we've seen a great economic benefit and economic revitalization by giving artists these opportunities in storefronts, office spaces, every type of commercial real estate for them to be in. We've also had a lot of success with hosting nonprofit collaborations, and some of these have blown our mind. And these all, once again, just to inspire what's possible. We did not set out to do this. We had no idea that the Palm Beach Symphony had discarded instruments that could no longer be played, that would then be provided to our artists to embellish with their artwork and their artwork styles, to then be auctioned at the opening season event of the Palm Beach Symphony at the Kravitz Center, which is one of the best performing arts centers anywhere in the country, where 50% of the proceeds from the musical masterpieces, instruments that they created would go back to the symphony to support their education programs, and 50% of the proceeds went back to the artists for what they sold. This is just a small example of what is possible, as you've now heard in Europe and in the US, by taking an empty space and doing something positive with it. Our mission initially, primarily, as you heard, has been to support artists as arts advocates, but we started getting offered some other type of spaces. Burger King corporate reached out to us and they said, we have 40 former Burger King locations that we don't have restaurant franchisees for. What could you do with it? Well, half of the Burger King is a kitchen, half of the Burger King is a dining room. Wouldn't make sense to put artists in the kitchen. So we put our thinking caps on together and realized, if the Burger King still has working equipment, we can make like a hood system, walk-in cooler, and all the things. We can do commissary kitchens for chefs, because if you're a food truck chef or a caterer, or you have a cottage-based business where you make granola or something, you need a food safe certified place, permitted, to prep your whatever you're preparing. So we're now piloting with the Downtown Baltimore Partnership, thanks to a culinary exchange grant that they have, our first commissary kitchen, which can be rented on an hourly, daily, weekly, monthly basis. We're also looking to position these. We live in South Florida. We have a lot of hurricanes and unfortunate natural disasters. So there's a lot of HUD, CDBG money involved, and potentially positioning these as food resiliency hubs. So when we do have another storm, these could be mobilized and activated to prepare those meals that go to people that were affected by hurricanes, and that could be deployed to other places as well. And then we're also realizing not everybody is a visual artist, a painter. So how many of you know somebody that sells on Etsy or sells at a farmer's market? They make handmade jewelry or soap, or a fashion designer. Well, it's very tough for them to get their own retail storefront and sign a 1, 5, 10-year lease, spend thousands of dollars, hope it works out. So we're going to do a similar concept in malls and in other commercial real estate environments of co-retailing, where same concept, large space, break them down into smaller spaces. An aspiring brand can rent 100 square feet or so, be in an environment with 10, 20 other creatives. So it's not all on them to keep the doors open. It's not all on them to do their own marketing. It's not all on them to run the POS system every day. And we've just found through these shared cooperative type of environments that obviously everybody's now promoting to their social media, so they're getting a wider audience to come in. There's a bigger economic impact because ideally, as I mentioned, my business partner first established within the malls, if you can attract shoppers, then you're more than likely going to be able to retain them, keep feet in the street longer to spend more money, have more economic impact. And that's some of what we're aiming to inspire here. And the last one I'll mention briefly, we got connected to Marriott, North America's food and beverage director, who started off his career as a bartender, worked his way up all the way to the top of the corporate ladder. He said, I really want to start mixology academies to help the hospitality industry. And he mentioned there's a training and training and staffing shortage that could be facilitated with a third party for Marriott. And what we're now piloting is daytime, former bar and restaurant spaces, many of which sit vacant because it's not easy to open a bar or restaurant. Daytime, it'll be a training program. Nighttime will be a pop-up, rotated, branded bar pop-up experience where those apprentices will be able to work for tips. And also, because of his relationships through Marriott Corporate, he has the training program funded, so the actual participants don't have to pay. So it's kind of like an apprenticeship type of opportunity, which is very exciting. So once again, these are just ways that we're changing the way, all of us, of people that are viewing and interacting with empty space. How many of you have an empty space in your community that you've driven by for 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, and just, wish it could be something better? It doesn't have to be that blighted, vacant thing, or not all vacant spaces are chronically vacant. How many of you have new mixed-use development in your community where they build apartments and the ground floor is retail, and oftentimes that retail sits vacant until they get the ideal permanent tenant? And unfortunately, in my country, in the US right now, there is a crisis with urban planning where they're requiring developers to build this ground floor retail, yet there's not enough boutiques and coffee shops and small businesses to occupy them. So by having us go in there on a temporary basis until the permanent tenant's secured, it supports the walkability of the property. It supports you can't write a positive press story about closed doors. Closed doors do not generate positive press. And the press has been, very generous to us. The community loves these type of opportunities to discover artists and creatives in places that they normally wouldn't be able to discover artists and creatives because they generally are creating at home where they're paying rent, or in the lower cost commercial real estate environments like an industrial warehouse district, the Wynwood neighborhood I mentioned, where the rent is generally cheap. So by putting artists in a strip mall, a retail, an office building where people are walking and commuting every day, they're able to discover artists in places that they normally never would have been able to discover them before. And we've had countless success stories where somebody goes, I go to this salon every 2 weeks to get my nails done or whatever the case may be. I watched this artist's artwork transform through the window over this period of time. Now I decided I want to support this artist, commission them $3,000 piece, $1,000, whatever it may be. And that's what's possible by taking these empty spaces and making them, these thriving creative placemaking hubs. These are just some of the positive impacts and benefits. We've generated now over $1.4 million of economic impact from the artists that we have had 800 artists participate. On average, they generate $2,000 of sales, some of which much, much more in their term in the program. So that's a real economic impact from a closed door that was not generating anything positive. It's actually costing the property money by maintaining it. We've gone into so many empty spaces where they didn't know there were leaks because the property manager might only go once a month, once a quarter, once a year to check on the space. So by having us in there, we're able to mitigate those maintenance issues before they get out of hand. We do podcasts with the artists. We tell their stories. You can find them on our YouTube page. A lot of collaborations we mentioned, like with the symphony, a lot of positive press coverage, which has a real tangible value for the properties companies we work with like Brookfield and like Simon, the two biggest mall companies in the world. And thankfully, you know, this, you really couldn't even put a value on getting on NPR for a positive story about closed space, getting on Next City's, you know, Solutions of the Year, Top Urban Art and Culture Stories of the Year, LoopNet's Top Stories of the Year. This is millions of dollars of press coverage we've earned where we name the properties, we name our partners, we name the stakeholders, all by just doing the right thing and making this empty space available. And fortunately, it's not just all the big companies like Simon and Brookfield, but we do work with individual, you know, smaller real estate companies. That was the first one I mentioned that gave us our first space, the Los Olas Company. We've opened 33 of them. 23 of them have been leased. That is part of the program. We did establish a 501c3 now called Spaces of Possibility, ideally to establish permanent spaces, either via property donation or philanthropic giving. Somebody, maybe a kid, inherits a property from their, you know, family, and they don't want to maintain it or to pay property taxes on it anymore. Now we can give them a tax-deductible donation receipt, have it be a permanent art space. We're hoping to eventually create live workspaces for artists through that model as well. But how this ties to the historic revitalization. So anybody here familiar with Genoa?
Like Italy.
Yeah, like in Italy. It's just a few hours away. So a dear friend of mine who participated in the art fair I previously showed you, Marcella Novotny, she was able to participate in our first Zero Empty Spaces location after she came for the art fair. We had space that we made available for her where she received some inspiration and a great experience that she brought back to Genoa. And fortunately, she connected during the pandemic with these two organizations with missions very similar to ours, but they were primarily focused on revitalizing Genoa's historic district. So there was, I believe, 19 vacant spaces that these organizations were able to make available for local small businesses. Hers happened to be an art gallery and a studio, where now she has her own studio. They made a bike shop, a flower shop, cafe. Another beautiful thing, in the cafe, they made the jobs, from what I understand, explicitly available to Ukrainian refugees and gave them career training and hospitality skill training and employment opportunities through this model. And this is now in part contributed, and she didn't believe it, I didn't believe it, but I saw the press stories. Genoa, somehow, this not major tourist destination in Italy, but it is a port town, was last year top 5 tourist destination in the world, in part due to the revitalization of the historic district, as you can now see here, which is now continually having events in the street and continually creating opportunities for artists. And if you ever do make it to Genoa, certainly encourage you to stop by. So that was part of the tie with the Historic Center. We're glad to do this anywhere. There's artists everywhere. There's empty spaces everywhere. We have to go places where there's artists. So if you happen to know a commercial real estate developer, ideally, if you know somebody within economic development, within placemaking that works for a downtown that would be interested in having their empty spaces revitalized, we can either work with them directly where we will, do the work. There's a lot of cities and downtowns now that are prioritizing vacant space activation and funding their own programs. We're now working on hybrid public-private partnerships where we can provide our SOPs, our frameworks, the technology that we use and implement to keep the spaces open and running with scheduling and the GPS geofence check-in for the artists that we have, so that cities can now have their own vacant space activation program that they don't have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to figure out how to do it. We're developing the walls that we use to delineate the spaces and break larger spaces down into smaller spaces that you can see here. we're now developing and prototyping this modular divider wall system in-house that will be able to deploy a kit with a pallet anywhere, including Europe, where we're planning to open soon, that two people, handy or not, with a IKEA type of system will be able to put these walls up and build out a 3,000 square foot space in one day. We've previously been doing 3,000 square feet spaces in 3 days, but now we're gonna manufacture them and ship them so that we can grow and scale our impact quicker. We're being asked to go all around the country, all around the world, and fortunately, with a partner of ours that's based in Europe, 3DWD, we are planning to open our first spaces in the Bikini Berlin Mall and beyond, and hopefully here in Italy as well. So this is just, once again, some of what's possible by just changing the way that we view and interact with empty spaces in a historic city center, in an urban center, in a suburban center. There's empty spaces everywhere. We're just glad to share this information, share these resources, and if it's through a vacancy advisory solution where we'll handhold the stakeholder group and provide even a turnkey activation system, we're really hoping that in some time there will be 0 empty spaces, which is ambitious but possible. And with that, I think